Thank you for joining us at our first ever benefit conference. And for those that don't know me, my name is Joel Babbitt. I have a whole bunch of my colleagues in the back. I work on behalf of the Nonprofit Association. And what my goal is to give you an overview of this thing called, we just affectionately refer to as retirement healthcare funding. But I'm going to start with a little bit of 403B, 457B, and basically see if we can get this thing working. And of course, it's now not working. What do I do? Helps if I turn it back on. All right. So again, Nonprofit Association. The association is in its 40th year. We got involved in the association in the mid to late 90s. The president of the association, Jim McNamee, asked us to build a financial co-op, primarily in response to what was going on in the deferred comp world on the municipal side. And so the association lobbies on behalf of promises made, promises kept. We advocate on behalf of pensions and the solvency of them. I run the financial co-op with a couple of my colleagues. There are some core principles that we wanted to do. We've got over 300 units of government across the country. Where Illinois originated here in Illinois, but we have a national footprint. So some of the oversight, we've got an advisory board. We've got an executive board that we report to collectively. Those boards help and volunteer and give us advice and guidance and help us along the way. All right. So just history of the co-op. 2001 started with deferred comp plan. 2004 added retirement healthcare funding. If I didn't warn you, I talk fast. I apologize. We do have a lot of material to cover, so this thing will be available. 2008, we expanded the co-op to schools, and in 2010, we added what's called a 401A money source. Real quickly, Secure 2.0. There's some big changes that have been coming around the last few years. The big one that's going to impact you for supposed to be January 1 of this coming year was catch-up provision. If you make $145,000 or more and you're eligible for catch-up, and the catch-up could be the age 50 catch-up, it could be the age 60 catch-up, it could be the alternative catch-up, any of those catch-ups, that catch-up had to be Roth. That's been postponed for government until 2027. So we all get a break. Sean, unfortunately, your plan, you're subject to these rules. Okay? You don't get the get out of jail free card. The other piece is that this catch-up rule only applies to those covered by Social Security. So most Article 3 and 4 are not covered by Social Security. TRS is not covered by Social Security. IMRF is. It's only Social Security wages is what's covered under this rule. So skip through that. I'm going to cover this real quick, this thing called an in-plan Roth conversion. There are 5 states that have an income tax but exclude retirement plan distributions. So again, what does the state of Illinois not tax? Retirements. So Illinois, Pennsylvania, Mississippi, Iowa, and Michigan as of next year exempt retirement plan distributions. So inside your deferred comp or inside your 403B, you can defer both pre-tax, you can defer Roth. And again, pre-tax, as we all know what that is, that's how us old timers have always saved. Roth, after tax, gross tax-free, comes out tax-free as long as you follow the rules. I see there's a delay in this. Aha. Okay. So Roth inside your 457 or 403B is not a Roth IRA. So if your limit's 23.5 if you're under the age of 50, all 23.5 can be pre-tax, all 23.5 can be Roth. Or any combination of the two. It's not a Roth IRA. Completely different. The limits do not apply. Okay? So it's a completely different set of rules. So if you put money into the Roth, you're obviously putting money in after tax. It grows tax-free and it comes out tax-free. The key is you have to be 59 and a half, and the first Roth deposit has to be 5 years old. If you're doing it in the 403B, it's the same. But the key is that with a Roth inside of your employer-sponsored plan, the first deposit has to be 5 years old before you can touch any of the money once you're 59 and a half. So there's this thing called an in-plan Roth conversion. And I'm going to walk through it. So what all plans should allow is you can put money into the plan pre-tax, convert it within your plan to Roth. And so what happens is that you can convert pre-tax to Roth, convert 100% of your account. You just have to pay federal taxes on it come April of the next year. But the key is that the state of Illinois doesn't tax it. And so if you're making a Roth contribution out of your paycheck into your 403B or 457B, you're paying both federal and state income tax on that deposit. But if you do this conversion, the federal government considers it a distribution. You don't pay any state income tax. And so the key when you do an in-plan Roth conversion is you have to be 59 and a half to touch the money. But there's also a 5-year rolling rule. So I'm 60. The money I converted last year, I cannot touch until I'm 64. Okay, so I deferred it when I was 59. I can't touch that until I'm 64 years old. The money I converted when I was 50, I can take out now because I'm over 59 and a half. The money I converted 2 years ago when I was 57, I can't touch that money until I'm 62, if my math is right. So there's just different rules on when you can take the money out. And so when you start playing with it, just some rules and tips that we tell people. If you've got people that have never participated in deferred comp or 403B, as they're walking out the door, they should be slamming everything they can into it because they could take it out the next day out of the deferred comp, regardless of age, and they pay no state income tax on it. We have employees in municipalities and school districts that are over 59 and a half, mostly on the school side. You don't find many safety at 59 and a half, unless something went wrong. Sorry. So what happens is that we have people that are putting money into their 403B or 457 over 59 and a half and taking it out the next day. They're stiffing the state of Illinois on the 4.95. So if you're maxing out, you just both the 457 and 403B, if you're in a school district, you're just the 457. You've just given yourself about a $200 a month raise. That's what it saves you in state income tax. And so just some things to give some thought to. When you go to convert the money, if this is your AGI for a family, and you convert some money you're going to owe in this example, like if you convert $20,000, you're effectively in the 22% tax bracket, you're going to owe about $4,400 in taxes. You have to have the cash to pay the taxes, okay? It cannot come out of your conversion. So for me personally, as I'm struggling with this is me. I've been maxing out and converting as time has gone on. So Roth became available January 1st of 2011. Tier 2, no coincidence, just happened to be what it is. So I put money in every pay period and converted about every pay period. It's a 3-page form I have to fill it out and send it in. The money gets converted. I get a 1099. So there were periods of time. What happened in 2020? What dreaded disease occurred, or that thing that and you guys were trying to find PPE and figure out how to educate children? We were all sitting around going, what do we do? Well, I happened to be mildly conscious one day and saw that the market had lost 35% of its value from the time the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl until about March 25th. And I'm like, I should probably convert some money. So I converted 125 grand. I got lucky. I caught the market bottom. I converted some money in 2022. What did the market do in 2022? It was hammered. It lost 20%, both stocks and bonds. And then last year, I was convinced that the Trump's tax cuts were going to expire. I guess wrong on that. So I converted a bunch of money. So for me, you add it all up, I've avoided $39,268 in state income tax. By doing this little game called an in-plan Roth conversion, I have an extra $69,000.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
But aren't you assuming in that scenario that you're not, depending on what you're paying in taxes right now,
right,
depending on what you're going to pay later in federal taxes, are you really going to be that far ahead?
I'm up 4.95 because I don't know if I'm going to be living in Illinois.
True.
So I'm up to 4.95.
Well, but are you?
Yeah.
If you need the current year tax deduction to bring your taxable income.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about in-plan. Let's talk about retirement healthcare funding. So retirement healthcare funding is a mechanism that allows you to put money away completely tax exempt to pay for healthcare costs once you separate service. And so I'm going to go through this, and what we're finding is, and Travis talked fantastic about this, in that we're experiencing whether it's a fire district, a water district, a municipality, everyone's struggling trying to recruit people. It's just really tough if it's a school district, whatever it may happen to be. And so what we're finding is that people are now starting to look at these plans as a way to entice and make their organization different than a competing organization. And so there's just less applicants to replace retiring workers. And the last thing you want is you want someone like this. Or the guy on the rig that's still on the rig. Or this. Tier 2. That's Tier 2. IMRF and TRS. They want to be here or here. Definitely not here. This is Trailer Estates, Florida. We were in front of the firehouse. This thing was booted. My mind immediately goes to this poor retiree ran out of money because his healthcare costs outstripped his COLA and his pension. Okay, that's where I went with this thing. So we know that death and taxes are a certainty in life, but we also know that you have to pay for healthcare, including premiums. Can anybody tell me what portion of your paycheck, what percent of your paycheck you're paying into Medicare?
1.45.
1.45. Thank you, Edward. So you, over the course of your life, you're paying 1.45% of your salary. Your employer's matching it. So 2.9% of your salary over your entire lifetime. From the time I started working at Dippy's Ice Cream in Buffalo Grove as a 15-year-old, I've been paying into Social Security and Medicare. And so 2.9% of my salary or my earnings have gone in there. So a lot of people think that, geez, once I get to Medicare, it's got to be free. So it's sort of like best practice. It's a thought process. So this is 1924 Tour de France. The thought was that smoking those heaters helped expand lung capacity. So that's what they thought was best practice. It's just crazy what people think about now. What 20 years from now are we going to go, geez, we were really wrong on that? So if you made $3 million over your lifetime, you've basically already prepaid about $87,000 into Medicare. So let's talk about, you've got two buckets of money. One bucket of money is pre-65. The other bucket is once you get to Medicare. So if you're pre-65, if you're going on Medicare, in order to have a 90% chance of meeting their health care needs once on Medicare, a female will need to have $226,000 in the bank the day she turns 65, and a male needs $191,000. Why are males less? We don't live as long. Medicare Part B premiums have increased 6.7% annually since 2018. Does your COLA do that? Even a Tier 1 COLA? No, not even close. Department of Health and Human Services says there's almost a 70% chance of needing long-term care needs. Everybody in this room has a pension. You will never, ever be poor, at least you shouldn't be, to qualify for Medicaid. Medicaid will help cover you for long-term care. Medicare does not. Fidelity does a comparable study to EBRI. The difference is that EBRI assumes a 90% chance of meeting your needs. Fidelity's about a 75% chance. And they don't differentiate between male and female. But they basically say a couple age 65, the day they hit Medicare, needs $345,000 in the bank. Now, they're trying to sell you an HSA. That's why they do those studies. That's the backstory on that. So why does this add up to be so much? And it's because you've got all these other things here. You got to buy Part D, prescription drugs. You have long-term care, deductibles, and co-pays. Most dental care. I had a root canal a year ago. It was like $2,700. It's ridiculous how expensive those things are. Most vision care, notably eyeglasses and contacts. You know, the Inflation Reduction Act added hearing aids into Medicare, so that eliminated some expense there. Cosmetic surgery, medical marijuana, and medical care outside the U.S. is not covered. So this gentleman was my wife's Uncle Al. Uncle Al was a medic in World War II. He actually started his medic in a German POW camp in Idaho. He lived until about 97 years old and passed away in Q1 or Q2 of 2023. And he was in a nursing home in Deerfield called Gidwitz. It was running him $296 a day. $9,000 a month, or about $108,000 a year. In Aunt Bertie's, Aunt Roberta, his wife Aunt Bertie, in her final 23 months of life, he needed help inside their one-bedroom apartment in Gidwitz. It was an additional $2,500 a month, just a flat fee. To have someone available to help lift, do the things he needed to do. So A Place for Moms talks about the average price of an assisted living facility. It's about $5,100 a month. And so we know people whose family's local, but have decided to put their family in assisted living facilities in the Rock Island area because it's just so much less. I mean, those are big decisions to make over not having accumulated enough wealth. We also know memory care is expensive. Depends on what state you're in. Memory care in Hawaii is about 11 grand a month. Memory care in South Dakota is at the low end of about 4. Illinois somewhere about 7 is what the median cost of memory care is here. So here's our experience. We've been doing these plans since 2004. We handle thousands of claims a month. And so when somebody separates service, you have the constitutional right to stay on your health insurance plan from the employer you're retiring out of. So pre-Medicare healthcare premiums, what we're seeing is it starts at about $700 a month on the low side to $4,400 a month on the high side. That $4,400 is Berwyn PPO family. That's 52 grand a year after tax to stay on the health insurance. Healthcare premiums are paid with after-tax money. As an employee, our premiums today come out pre-tax, pre-Medicare, pre-Social Security, so it's getting subsidized by the federal government. And depending upon where you're at, the pension fund will remit the premium to the employer. So I want to go through some sample pension checks that we experience from our stakeholders. And so it's easy to multiply or divide this number. 100,000 salary, so this is safety. This is municipal. This is Article 3 and 4, police and fire. $100,000 salary, 30 years of service, 75% pension. Not bad. $6,250 a month. Going to withhold, I'm assuming about 18% for federal taxes. Our average family premium right now is about employee and spouse. So couple is about $1,500 a month. That's what we're seeing as an exposure. So your check, that $6,200 is now down to $3,625. Our stakeholders on the safety side are retiring when they probably still have kids as dependents. They also have kids in college. They have mortgages still. So $3,625 is before you've paid anything. So 42% of your pension check is gone. I'm also assuming you're in a no tax state for retirement plan distribution. So it's one of those 5 states, or the other, I think it's 14 states that don't have income tax. TRIP. So if you're a teacher, you can get your insurance through TRIP, which is Teachers Retirement Insurance Plan. Premium plan. So same assumption. The TRIP premium for an employee and spouse for a couple is $2,542 a month. That's what it is today. So same assumptions, 59% of the check is gone between taxes and healthcare. So our experience is somebody retiring at 55 for premium cost only, I'm assuming 5.27% healthcare inflation, which is low, which what we're seeing right now, but that's what it had averaged from 2001 to 2020. You're going to incur $230,000 if your premium is $1,500. You need a $280,000 in an investment account to generate that. Okay? So you add up the buckets. Pre-65, $280. The Medicare numbers are $345 to $417 for a couple, and it's just a lifetime supply of money. It's a lot of money you need. Our experience is you can never get enough money in these plans. You retire at 60, it saves you a lot of money. Stinks working another 5 years just because you want the health care. So it cuts the need down some. TRIP, $2,583 over 5 years is $172,000. You need close to $210,000 just to pay premiums from 60 to 65 on TRIP. Again, $500,000 to $650,000, $620,000. So here's the consumer price index. The consumer price index from 2001 to 2020 was 1.91. Really, we had little inflation in there. Then we had COVID, and now it's coming back down again. Medical care inflation, or medical insurance premiums, and I'm going to ask Gary a question in a second, this is the 5.27 number that I referenced earlier for healthcare inflation. Because I'm hoping that it's going to return back to some normality, but it's probably not the case, as he's laughing at me and shaking his head. Medical insurance premiums going up. Gary, what have you been being told on the fully insured 50 to 150 group for 2026? Thank you. So Blue Cross Blue Shield is telling us And for those in the group health insurance marketplace of brokers, 20 to 25% is what you expect your insurance premiums to increase by, and they're already telling you no rate relief. Don't come back asking for help. We're not going to give it to you. So it's like, whoever thought it would be this much money? You go to work, you want to accumulate wealth, you want to retire, and you're like, I want to spend a couple days a week fishing, whatever your passion is. Grandkids. So what do these plans do? It's tax-free in, tax-free growth, tax-free out. The catch is the money can only come out for qualified medical expenses, including premiums. All right? So that's the catch. You can use this money. Sorry, that's the catch. And it's also an above-the-line deduction. So the money is coming out of your check prior to Medicare and Social Security. So for the employers in the room, that saves you the match. All right? So there's a win for you on the match. And again, Social Security is IMRF covered. Some Article 3 and 4. So you've got this money. You've got this account. What can I use it for? You get to reimburse yourself for all qualified medical expenses, including premiums. The primary trigger is separation of service. There are vendors out there. There's a few vendors. We're one of them. We have 3 triggers to access your money. The primary one is separation of service. But you can use it on co-pays, deductibles, dental, vision, chiropractic, co-insurance, and the big one's premiums. We handle thousands of claims a month. The incidentals are there, but the big exposure every month is the premium. Because if you separated service and your premium is $2,500 a month, are you all that concerned about the $20 copay? You're probably not messing with it. You've come to us and say, send me $1,500. Send me some number up to that premium. You could also get it for furlough. I'm oversimplifying it, but during COVID, the city of Peoria was threatening to furlough 30 police officers and 20 firefighters. Well, furlough is not separation. So we went back to the lawyer, fired up the lawyer, and in about a week, they came back to us and said, hey, we can add some language in there that can make it work. It also comes about where you'd have somebody who's going out and petitioning for a duty disability, but it's being contested, and they go through their sick day bank, all right? So at that point, it gives them access to their money. The other is FMLA. What I mean by FMLA is we had a firefighter with liver cancer. The firefighter goes through their sick day bank, 41 years old, spouse and 2 children. Do you think they need their health insurance? Yes. So at that point, the employer came to us and said, listen, this person's writing a check for $3,100 a month to stay on the health insurance plan after tax. Basically, 2/3 of his wife's monthly pay. What can we do? So we added that language in there that it allows them access to it. You can use this account in its simplicity on anybody you're taking an exemption for on your federal income tax return. Yourself, spouse, parents, mom and dad are in a nursing home. They're your tax dependents. You can use it on them. Okay? There are 3 vehicles that people are using, and I'm going to cover them all. But the first is a VEBA, 501c9 trust. The second's a 115 trust, and the third's a health savings account. We're agnostic as an organization. They all have pros and cons, and we've been primarily using 115 trust since about 2012. VEBAs stands for Voluntary Employee Beneficiary Association. They've been around since 1928. You can use it to pay all medical expenses, including premiums, deductibles, and copays. The problem with a VEBA, and I'm going to get to that in 2 slides, I think, is if you're dead without a tax dependent, the money's gone. It reverts back to the trust and gets divvied up among the active participants. Okay? That's the drawback of a VEBA. There are some vendors that have a 1 or 2 bucket claim process, and that's a whole other conversation that I don't have time for. The 115 trust has been around since 1999. It comes from a single private letter ruling for Long Beach Police. You use it for all the same medical expenses, deductibles, and copays. The big advantage of the 115 trust is that if you die without a tax dependent, depending on the vendor and how the product is written, some vendors, if you're dead without a tax dependent, the money reverts back to the employer. We worked collaboratively for several years with the U.S. Treasurers Conference, U.S. and Canadian Treasurers Association, and we figured out a mechanism to allow you to leave it to a tax dependent. So as you're looking at these trusts and you're evaluating the marketplace, one of the questions to ask is, Because ideally, do you want a little bit of money when you hit Medicare in this thing, or do you want a lot of money in this thing? You want a lot of money. You want to make sure that if you're dead without a tax dependent, you can leave it to your grown children. So those are questions to ask as you're evaluating a product. Death and VEBA. If you die with a tax dependent, the account is retitled in the dependent's name. So we had a 51-year-old Chicago Heights, died of a staph infection. The account got retitled in his wife's name. His death, unfortunately, was separation of service, immediate access for her to start using the money. She went on COBRA. We had a 35-year-old Lockport firefighter die of an infection, non-job related. The account gets retitled in the spouse's name. They have immediate access to do it. We have had people die without tax dependents. The money ends up reverting back to the plan sponsor, gets divvied up among the active participants. Okay? So the story I have permission to share is Joe Matchett, Naperville. Joe passed away, 51 years old, of glioblastoma. He had a significant amount of money in his account. The money reverted back to the FOP bargaining and everyone got a little piece of Joe. Okay? That's the drawback of a VEBA. With the 115 trust, you die with the tax dependent, gets retitled in the dependent's name. But if you die without a tax dependent, the account is liquidated after any final claims are paid and your funds are remitted to your beneficiary that you've got on file with us. So I jokingly say, and now my son's in the room here, I jokingly say my oldest, who's 26, would trade in his Yamaha R1 and probably buy a Yamaha R3, or he'd trade in his Charger for something faster. My middle one is prudent. He'd end up investing the money. For all I know, my 22-year-old daughter in New York would give it to a cat shelter. I just don't know what she'd end up doing with that money. Okay? I'm going to leave it at that. So, but the funds are received tax-free and they can go do whatever they want with that money. How many of you have an HSA? I do. Can you use your HSA to pay for health insurance premiums? You are correct. Unless it falls under these three exceptions. If your high deductible health premium is part of COBRA continuation, the problem with basically everyone in this room is when you stay on your insurance, when you separate service, it's not COBRA. It's the Illinois Continuation Act. TRIP is not COBRA. If you, the HSA owner, are currently receiving unemployment under a state or federal program, the last time I checked, your pension's not unemployment. If you're over the age of 65, 4 years. 4 years and a couple months. I can start using my HSA to pay for premiums. Okay? So there is a rule that was passed in 2014. And we could spend hours on this, and I'm going to touch on it really briefly. If you're in an environment where you're dealing with labor, unionized labor, and I'm going to give you some examples of a park district where there was no union employees, all non-represented. When you spin a plan out, when a group becomes eligible to participate, they're afforded a one-time opportunity to not participate, a one-time opt-out. One shot only. It's irrevocable. So you can't 3 years later go, hey, I really wanted this thing. Too bad. You're out. All future members of that bargaining unit or of that class are mandatorily covered. It's a condition of employment. So how are these plans funded?
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
Can you break that bargaining unit out even further than the bargaining unit itself? Like, could you take that rule and say tier 1 can, but tier 2 can't?
Yeah, you'd make it. So the question is, can you break it out? Tier 1 would be an eligible group. Tier 2 would not be an eligible group at some time in the future. Absolutely. Very rarely do we see employer money going into this. We're seeing more of it lately as a recruiting retention tool. And we're going to give you some examples on that. Sick time, comp time, bonus, longevity. The bulk of what we see are employee contributions to give up a wages in return for money going into your account. So we're in Addison Fire Protection District, and the firefighters in Addison had an unlimited sick day bank. Nice place to be. I had this 46-year-old firefighter who was in a bowling alley on like a Tuesday night yelling at me going, Joel, when I started, I was told by an old gray hair to never ever use a sick day because I get a big old check when I walk out the door. And I'm sometimes a little ready, shoot, aim. I flippantly go, God, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Let's get some math behind it. So what's going to grow faster, wages or your investment account? It better be your investment account. What do wages typically go up by? CPI. 3, 4, whatever it may happen to be. You would never lend a friend money for 3% taxable interest over 30 years. Let's say that's wage inflation. But yet you're doing it with your employer. And I would argue your employer's not your friend. They're your employer. So this is the specifics for this one person. 46-year-old retiring in 9 years. We're assuming 3% wage inflation. Firefighters work 2,880 hours a year. They get 12 hours a month, or he accumulates 144 hours a year into his bank. This guy's bank was 2,497 hours. They were proposing capping it at 300. It's a low number. I get it. Okay, but that's what they were talking about doing. Addison Fire has light duty, so the Chief Walker would accommodate. 41.17 an hour, 8% rate of return on the money, 9 years until retirement, and he is responsible for 100% of his premium. So here was his game plan. They end up putting in the trust. He received $92,000 tax-free into his account. Each year, the employer deposits all sick time above the 300. So if he finishes the year above the 300 threshold, it automatically rolls in. In 9 years, when he separated service, any remaining bank goes in. His earnings and account basically grew to $292,000, all tax-free. This was his plan. His plan was a tritune. So his thought was, I'm going to work another 9 years, and assuming he never, ever uses a sick day over the course of 9 years. If you're in your 50s fighting fires, you think you may have a sick day every once in a while? Maybe. I don't know. It's a big risk. So at the end of 9 years, sick day bank is 3,940 hours. The check's $193,000. So he's at the highest wage rate he's ever going to be at. He also gets an additional $193,000. He owes $58,842 in taxes. He nets $134. All right. So let's compare the outcomes for these two examples. The $134,000 goes into an investment account, and I'm assuming 8% rate of return. It's going to generate, based on the premium estimates, 45 months of health care. 134 generates about $150,000 of lifetime value. By using the tax code, the same bucket, by using the sick day bank into a trust like this, it's 110 months of coverage, 9.17 years. Generates at 292, ends up generating $420,000 of lifetime value. It's a $270,000 advantage. Same bank. You're doing what, frankly, rich people do by using the tax code. Okay? So I'm going to go through a bunch of examples. So this is municipal park, water district, whatever it may be. We've done plans where we've done it by department heads. Walked into the village of Bradley. Phil Trudeau, who's one of IPBFA board member, was the union president at the time. He was trying to get his bargaining unit to put in the plan. They could not get out of their way to save their lives. Just couldn't get out of their own way. Mark Prees, the village manager, said, this is the coolest thing ever. He pulled all the department heads together and we're like, hey, we're going to do a department head plan. Everyone's at 5% of pay. That's what they agreed to. So you can break it up by job title, by years of service. Here's your tier 1, tier 2. You also have additional funding method. Ideally, our experience has been is you don't want to create the perfect to begin with because you get paralyzed. Get it started somewhere. And then what we find is additional pieces end up getting added to it. And so it could be comp time, sick time, vacation, longevity, just different ideas that those levers can be switched on and off at different periods of time down the road. This is supposed to say unused uniform allowance. That's KKT police. If you don't spend all your uniform allowance, the unused uniform allowance mandatorily goes into your account. Now, I'm not convinced that the cops aren't running around with holes in their shoes, but that's a separate issue. We also have entities that are giving money for opting out of the employer health plan. School district, again, do it by job title. And we'll give some additional examples. Again, we see employer money into a 403B, 457B. It's more efficient for the end user in here. It's all tax-free. You can also put a vesting schedule on it. So just different ways of playing with this. We have a school district in Arizona that it's all the principals and assistant principals, and they've done it by school size, by how many students there were. Is how they decided to break it up. Do you want me to go back to, I'll get all this to you. Safety. For the most part, this is being driven on the safety side. It's because they can retire tier 1 at the age of 50. On average, it's 53, 54, and they have a lot of exposure just to get to Medicare. And so, again, rank, job title, tier 1, tier 2. So let me start going through some more specific examples. Just fire department, hang on one second, police. So we're working with the fire chief in his contract. Could be a superintendent, could be a CSPO, could be whatever. 15% of his salary. Upon retirement, all accumulated sick and vacation time is automatically deposited. Unused vacation time annually goes into it. So the new fire chief, it reduced salary with the employer by the insurance premium. So this is somebody who retired out of XYZ, out of, City of Plainfield, Village of Plainfield, now is the chief in Berwyn, whatever it may happen to be, getting their health insurance from Plainfield, spending $2,500 a month for their health insurance after tax to reimburse Plainfield. We took the 30 grand, laundered it through this account, and we're paying the premiums tax-free. He just picked up $600 a year, $6,000 in tax-free benefit. So again, just different ways to start thinking about that. Superintendent. We had a superintendent that was getting money deposited into their 403B. Decided to put it here instead. Because what do you have to pay for? You got to pay for health care. This is a legal laundry machine. Money goes in tax exempt, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free. Period, end of story. The money cannot come out of the trust for anything other than that. There's no hardships, there's no loans. It's not even marital property, it's not divisible. Okay? So if you got to pay for health care, you might as well pay for it tax-free. That's what this superintendent did. And then on top of that, decided to make an additional contribution of their own. We stuck it right in his contract. This is Hoffman Estates Fire. When they started the plan, they did it by years of service. And so you could see there was a group that was towards the end that they got everyone at 28 years plus together and said, what do you want to do? They collectively said, we're going to do 15%. Now, they're changing it as time goes on at the next contract, but when somebody goes from this group to this group, they're stuck at that level. It is what it is. Okay? So this is the first part of it. Then the Village of Hoffman Estates gives you a cash bonus for opting out of the health insurance. For the group of firefighters that were receiving that cash bonus, they decided that 50% of the healthcare opt-out would go into the plan. The other 50% they just took as cash. 100% of all time due. And then they also have a sick leave usage incentive. It's something like you use those sick time, you get $2,500. So we see these sick leave usage incentives being applied more and more. Shaler Township, Pennsylvania, suburb of Pittsburgh. You know, Pennsylvania is a commonwealth. You can't call it a state because you get yelled at for that. So they're struggling like everybody hiring people. So what they decided to do was build a structure within the police union contract. Every officer's getting $1,500 a year. They put a 5-year vesting schedule. Because what their experience was that they would hire and pay to train somebody, and then 3 years into their career, the city of Pittsburgh comes and taps the officer on the shoulder and goes, $3 an hour more, come to us. 50 cents an hour more, you come over to the big boys. Whatever the language they're using. So what they wanted to do was, because once they had an officer 5 years, they're convinced that the officer's not going anywhere. That's how they built that structure, recruiting retention tool. This is a school district that subsidizes healthcare for teachers when they retire in their first 4 years after retirement. So in schools, you announce your retirement, and then in your final 4 years, your salaries go up accordingly. We're not going to address that all that much. But basically, you announce your retirement 4 years out. So what the school district decided to do was fund their promise to the retiree in their final 4 years. So what happened is that somebody announces their retirement. By the time they retire 4 years later, they've got almost $35,000 to $40,000 in that account. And then the district's off the hook going forward for subsidizing healthcare. And the beauty of that account is they don't have to go on trip to use it. They can defer it. They can go on their spouse's coverage. They can go buy other coverage. It doesn't matter. So it gives them choice to allow the money to use for coverage outside of TRIP. It also doesn't account against the 6% cap for teacher retirement system. We're finding more and more entities starting to cap their sick day bank. So this entity decided to cap it at 400. So if you finish the year above 400, it automatically rolls into the plan dollar for dollar. Upon retirement, accumulated sick and vacation time is deposited within 30 days of retirement. This was a kick in the pants to the village administrator because they were always slow in paying, so they stuck that in their contract. Good labor lawyer. They're also doing 3% of salary. So another example, annual sick leave usage and sick leave buyback, end of career payment. Principal goal. So it's a school district that they've got goals set for the principals. If they reach their goals, they get money. They decided to stick it into this account, is what they decided to do. They also have a leadership incentive, plus they're all doing 3% of salary. And these things will modify as time goes on. As groups become more comfortable or experiences, these plans tend to grow. But again, you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it over time. So this happened to be, the school district that they're giving a match into the 403B or 457B. Tier 1, they're doing up to $2,500. Tier 2, up to $4,250. And the thought is that because this is tax exempt, the end user ends up with more money. The end user ends up with $146,000 more. That's just the tax savings. So it's an effective way to get people. And if you're good about what you're doing, you can work on figuring out in your communication when you're recruiting and trying to retain people, but recruiting people, how you incorporate, I'm already thinking about your retirement. I want to make sure you can retire when you want to retire. Because we know that a lot of people simply aren't retiring because of the healthcare costs. So this is just an effective way. It starts making you think differently.
But I've got a question on that.
Yeah.
Because your match is TRS credible earnings. So if you're close enough to retirement, it actually is going to make that final number higher. So if you put that into this instead, you're actually going to reduce your credible earnings.
No, since an employee's FSA contribution is credible earnings, is that correct?
I'm talking about the match. But when you make a match, so I've got a dollar for dollar match. My
Debbie, you want to address that? Since you have your hands up?
Most of the school districts where they have this for tier 2, they're going to be over half.
Gotcha. So the only tier 2 people that's benefiting. So if you're tier 1, you want
Right, you want it correct. Okay. Absolutely correct. Thank you. So this happened to be, I think it's Sycamore Fire. They had a sick day bank at $28.80. The union wanted it capped at $7.20. So they received 75 cents on the dollar. Sycamore bought it down. The money all goes into the account. When the sick day bank is greater than $7.20 as of January 1st, because you finish the year above that threshold, it automatically goes in. Then the members have a schedule of contribution based on years of service. This is Buffalo Grove Park District. All non-represented. It took about 12 months of education. So they decided collectively to do it by years of service in IMRF. So 0 to 5 years. So even if you came from another entity, another park district, you were then thrown into the years of service schedule based on years of service in IMRF, and it was just communicated upon joining the district. 100% into career pay above the 240. Then all department heads are doing 4% of salary and the end of career pay at 100% dollar for dollar, because with IMRF you can sell back days for your pension. So they wanted not to impinge somebody from doing that, so they did it above that threshold. Simple one. Again, get it started. 3% of salary, 100% into career payout. Schiller Park Fire. Real easy. They were trying to create a Ferrari, and they got lost in the weeds. So they decided, let's keep it simple. And now they're modifying it as time goes on. So, tier 2 pension cap. Sorry, bring up a sore subject. So we have bargaining units now that the members are making above the pension cap. So instead of, so policemen are contributing 9.91, firemen are 9.455. They get above the cap, they're still continuing to make their pension contribution, but it's going into this plan instead. And then what they've done is they've negotiated an employer match at 50 cents on the dollar. So for Orland Fire, they hit it in October. So it's not that big of a lift for the employer because no one touches it until October. Bolingbrook Sergeants, it was probably September of last year when they hit the cap. And so it's just a way, again, as you're looking at tier 2, and we especially see on the teacher retirement side or the IMRF side that it's a lower cap, that this is a way to start thinking differently about, I'm going to be short for retirement because I'm limited on how much money I can actually put into my pension. Where does the money go? It looks, feels, and tastes like a deferred comp plan. You have a portfolio of funds. You manage your own money. It's your own account. It's not a pooled account. We do have some pooled plans, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's an individual account, just like your own deferred comp plan. You manage it. Portfolio funds, some vendors have managed accounts, vendors have stable value funds. So you get to manage your own money, and then when you separate service, you choose how to spend it, how much you take out. It's one of these rare win-wins. It's triple tax-free. The employer saves all the payroll taxes. It's an above-the-line deduction. It's basically an FSA for retirement without the use it or lose it. And if it's structured right, it will discourage the abuse of sick time. I know no one's abusing their sick time, but how many of you have overtime issues? Yes, I see the smiles. It's because your benefits and compensation aren't in alignment. And if you get them structured correctly, you'll see this number come down. You'll see your sick time use come down. And that's what we're seeing. Okay? Reduces overtime, reduces payroll taxes, reduces sick day banks, reduces OPEB, which is that liability that you owe people because you're subsidizing stuff. And basically, you want your employees to retire on their own terms. You don't want people sticking around because they can't afford the health care. You want people out when they want to go because employees are typically miserable when they are there when they don't want to be there. So the vendors will provide you with contract language, plan documents, and resolutions to adopt. So whoever you're working with, they'll take care of that for you. 10 minutes left. That was 101 slides. Sorry, I went fast. Questions that anybody may have before I'm keeping you from lunch? Yes.
So real quick, in the places where you've done it uniform across the board,
Yeah.
have you seen that in that bargain, people are having to go higher than they normally would on salary because some people may not want 3% of their check going. They count on every penny.
Right.
And so they're going to push back if they don't feel like at least I'm whole.
Right. So what we're finding is, did everyone hear the question? Okay. So are people pushing back because a group may want 3% of salary and you have somebody that doesn't want it? They may scale back their deferred comp or their 403B contributions. So there's other pressure points. And what ends up happening is because this is the most efficient way to save, that it ends up, unfortunately, they'll either opt out of participating or they're going to suck it up and make it happen. So, other questions? Thank you, everybody. Greatly appreciate you signing up for the showing. So have a great day.